I think it's about time. I think it's about time that I finally address the other trash fire of the summer 2022 anime season. Yes, not Rent-a-Girlfriend Season 2. My stepmom's daughter is my ex. Yes, I have been putting this off for quite a while. I actually put off watching the show until like late last week. It's just something about this show just was not drawing me in, but I still wanted to check it out. I still wanted to get a chance, and this is my thoughts on the first 2 episodes of the series. Is it as bad as it seems from the outside? Is this complete Wincest, incest? What is it? Let's jump right into it. My stepmom's daughter is my ex opens up pretty much as the title would lead you to believe. We have essentially 2 people that used to be a couple, and their parents are now married. And it opens up very quickly to the 2 of them already kind of established as being siblings, and it seems like they're trying to give off a facade to their parents. They want their parents to be happy, so they're not going to reveal the fact that they used to be a couple. None of that stuff. And they're trying to be as perfect of siblings as possible just to make sure they understand that they are acceptant, that they are siblings. Now, that's the weird thing I'm already kind of seeing in their logic here is that their whole mindset is that we need to be perfectly siblings. Otherwise, they'll know that we were a couple. And it's like, no, typically if you get married into a couple, sometimes the siblings don't work out. Sometimes they hate each other. So they think that somebody's invading their territory, essentially. But it's fine. The parents are happy. They're trying to be happy, at least from the outside. But of course, from our perspective, we see that they're constantly glaring at each other. They're constantly questioning who's going to be the one that's going to spill the beans. And this turns into kind of a game in the first episode as they kind of establish this competition between the 2 of them. Which one will show signs that they are not siblings first? And so we have Yume, and she goes into his room and starts looking at all of his books, saying, oh, we're siblings, so I should be able to look at all of your books. And he's upset about that. She starts going towards his secret stash, and so he decides to kind of employ this regret from his past. Like that moment he kind of steps forward and says, you know what, let's let bygones be bygones. Whatever happened in the past, let's just put it behind us. And that really throws her off because she immediately sees the guy that she went out with. And so she breaks, and then he catches her on it. And this whole competition was just to kind of command the other person to be the one that's the older sibling, because it seems like despite the fact that she was born like a couple hours after he wants to claim that he's the older brother. She wants to claim that she's the older sister. Just really kind of juvenile bickering back and forth. And then we have this later segment where she's trying to throw him off. Like, this guy, I know I can throw him off. If only I can throw him off. Oh, I can come out with only a towel. And then she realized that she's technically seducing him, and that throws her off. So there's your big crazy incest moment, I guess, for the first 2 episodes, which he completely flips on her, starts talking about, I'll let myself lose this one time to take you, and she starts freaking out, and then the parents come home, obviously. But as we get into the second episode, things are kind of opening up a little bit around these characters. As we see, they're starting a new year in school. Yes, so happens they both go to the same school, even though they thought they were going to go to separate schools. But the thing that's really quickly established is that Yume is trying to change her life. As we kind of get these little perspective shots of their past together, she was a bookworm. She had glasses, she had her hair tied up in like braids, she was nerdy. And it seems like she's trying to change her outward appearance to people around her. She wants to get friends and everything. She wants to get away from being a bookworm and get more active and get friends and be a little more popular. Well, on the other side of things, Mizuto is just kind of keeping his usual self. He's kind of, yes, still in his books all the time. He doesn't really want to make friends or anything like that. And so you have this little conflict in that all the boys want to get with Yume because she's a lot more attractive now, she's a lot more outgoing, and they're trying to use Mizuto to get to her because they know that they're siblings. And this makes Yume really angry. She doesn't like that people are using him to get to her. And so she's kind of took it upon herself, despite the fact that he's like, don't worry about it, who cares? She takes it upon herself to try to fix the situation by claiming that she's a brocon, that she likes her brother. Yeah. And then it kind of turns this whole thing where Yume makes her first friend. She thinks this Akatsuki girl is trying to fool her, but then eventually realizing that this girl's kind of cool and I want to hang out with her, so she makes her first real friend. In the later part of the second episode, this friend comes to meet her because she's sick, and Yume starts to, even though she was sick at first, and she started in a fever frenzy using Mizuto to get her things and dote on her, Eventually, he realizes she's no longer sick, and she just keeps acting like she's sick just to keep him around her. So that obviously blew up in her face again. So my thoughts on my stepmom's daughter is my ex. Like I kind of alluded to at the very beginning, coming in this show, I'm like, here's the incest show of the season. Here's the trash fire show of the season. I will admit that it looks good. I really liked, because we have project number 9, which they worked on Higehiro, and I don't think it's the same character designer, but it does have a similar style to Higehiro, in which case the girls were really cute in that show, and they definitely have that style in this show as well. This show does look good, and Yume is really cute, which plays into the show itself and having these more risque moments. Like I said, the whole towel scene with Mizuto and Yume. But the thing that kind of surprised me about this show is, despite the fact that I came into it with that expectation, it's just going to be a trash fire, here we go, 2 people that were in love being in the same house and ecchi ensues, it seemingly isn't as reliant on it than I originally thought. It seems like they're trying to do something with these characters. Now, granted, Mizuto, not as much. Maybe they will eventually. It does kind of play a little bit in the idea that he's obviously being used by the other boys in his class to get close to Yume. He obviously isn't really shocked by it. He knows it's happening. But what they're really doing with the characters is much more than that. It's much more, I don't know, I wanted to say wholesome at the very beginning, but I don't think it's necessarily wholesome. It does feel like these two have an attraction to each other. They did love each other back in the day. They had a falling out, and now they're stuck with each other. And while you do have that initial juvenile bickering that's happening between the characters, it does seem like they're trying to do something more with them. And it's kind of it's a mixture, honestly. It's a struggle that I actually have in watching this show, is that on this end, it does seem like it's genuine. They feel like they want to protect each other. Yume wants to protect Mizuto, so she's going to go out of her way and sort of insult herself by claiming that she's in love with her brother. At the same time, you are seeing her technically going through something she's never gone through before, stepping out of her shell of being a bookworm to becoming something more, becoming more active, having friends, getting out of her bookworm life. And I think if the story can kind of focus on that stuff, people really changing themselves, and yes, technically having them support each other with that mindset they once had a relationship, I think it'll actually be good. Yume technically really hates Mizuto because he's so straightforward and he's so wishy-washy. On one end, he does act like he's a really cool guy, but on the other hand, he does things that bugs her. And she hates that wishy-washy nature. She hates that he's able to manipulate somebody so willingly just for a gain. When he does talk like he's the one that she once loved and talks about getting rid of all this excess baggage, it bugs her so much that he's so willing to manipulate her like that. But obviously not acknowledging the fact that she's manipulating him too. So in the end, it's like, as much as I want to claim the show as trash, it's not really doing anything that's super offensive. Like, it's surprisingly, like I said, I struggle with saying wholesome. Like, it's surprisingly good-natured in the end. Like, that initial synopsis I read where it was just basically juvenile bickering between them, technically it's there. But again, from the outside looking in, this looks like it's going to be just a straight-up incest show, and it does seem like it's doing something much more. Mizuto doesn't want to give up his sister to a playboy. Yume doesn't want to let boys use him to get close to her. Yume doesn't like him being bullied. Mizuto does know when she's pushing herself too much and goes to her when he realizes she's technically being a lot more physical than she usually is and try to help her. Now, granted, his teleportation to catch her when she's falling over is pretty convenient, but you still get a sense that these two do care for each other. Now, the big question mark is, will this show go the route that they realize they've always loved each other and they still want to be a couple, which I'm assuming is going to happen. So let me stop there. Where do I think this show's going? I think that's the bigger question. Where do I think my stepmom daughter is my ex is going? The worst route, depending on who you ask, would be the case where they're both trying to be siblings on the outward appearance, and they're constantly having to interact with each other till eventually they realize how much they actually cared about each other. Again, Mizuto knowing Yume's pushing herself too much and trying to help her. Again, Yume not wanting him to be bullied. So these interactions, these experiences around other people eventually pulls them together to realize they actually loved each other as a couple. And the assumption there is that as the show goes along, they're eventually going to secretly be a couple. I could totally see it go in that direction. I see a lot of source material go in that direction, unfortunately, but that's one route. The other route that they can go in, which would probably be a lot more acceptable to the broader audience, is just really having the two of them, yes, acknowledging that they had this previous relationship, but technically that morphing into them acknowledging that they love each other as siblings, that they do just love certain things about each other, but know how to draw that line. Draw that line where it doesn't get too far. Like maybe the issues that they had when they were younger, when they were actually a couple, perhaps a lot of that had to do with deeper relationship issues. But in actuality, just the overall surface level of their relationship, they actually had fun together, is more about them just as people. And that's technically something that can be addressed just by being siblings. It would be a lot more, as much as yes, it's fun to joke about the idea of these two actually becoming an actual couple and hiding it from everybody, that would be a lot more interesting of a story to have that evolution of their relationship from just being, yes, a couple, being physical, to it being just about being together and learning what it is that's special about each other. That it doesn't require them to get physical. It doesn't require them to be in a relationship to experience. But we all know it's going in the route of the prior one. We know it's going to go full incest. We'll see. But yes, surprising show. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. It was kind of boring at the beginning, honestly, just kind of juvenile bickering back and forth, but I am hoping that it'll kind of get into something a little more interesting as you pull a lot of these side characters in, and yes, as you kind of figure out what they're going to do with the characters going forward. But that's my thoughts on the first 2 episodes. My Stepmom's Daughter is my ex. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment. Let me know what you thought of the series so far. Are you going to be checking it out? Subscribe to the channel if you've not already so you can get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, episode by episode impressions. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link and a tips link in the description below. We definitely appreciate everybody that supports us, and y'all take care.